So I know I said yesterday that that was my last video before January, but then I thought I might as well do a quickie of the new hero before I go. So here's the lore of the new hero Hoodwink. Hoodwink's earliest years were spent in the idyllic expanse of green that once filled the edges of Krimwohl. But as that kingdom grew, and the needs of both her citizens and her armies became ravenous, rival Oran timber barons scratched and clawed to outpace each other in devouring the natural beauty of the border forests, gorging themselves to meet the demands of the changing land. To those living in the ancient timberlands, the choice came down to following the line of refugees into the pacified zones, falling to Krimwohl's black powder or steel while defending their homes, or fleeing further north to tempt the fate in the haunted glens and groves of the misty Wood Tomo'kan. So it was in those treacherous northern mistwoods that Hoodwink came of age, dodging the horrific predators of the Tomo'kan, integrating herself with some of the local banditry whilst agonizing others, and finding absolutely every which way to be underfoot whenever some interesting mischief arose, often allegedly the cause of it. But when the faintest whiff of Krimwohl's fires eventually drifted into her adopted home, Hoodwink's thoughts turned to any family and friends who might have survived the invasion, now made to eke out lives in the raised lands whose wounds scarred her very soul, and she couldn't help but approach the edges of civilization to get a glimpse of the devils that had destroyed her old life. There she saw that the monsters from her childhood weren't monsters at all, they were just people. Soldiers, laborers, merchants, and refugees. And the soldiers, even with their black powder and steel, were nothing compared to the dangers of the Tomo'kan, real dangers with tentacles and teeth, dangers who dance around like a twirling maple seed. Knowing she can always find a safe passage in the tangles of the Tomo'kan, where most warm-blooded folk wisely fear to tread, Hoodwink now strikes out against those who dare try to further pacify the wilds, happily taking what she lacks from their belongings, destroying what she has no use for, and helping guide any kindred survivors back to life in the green once again. So basically, her people used to live in this lush place called Krimwohl, but were forced out by greedy merchants seeking to destroy the forest with their civilization. This forced Hoodwink's people to go north, where dangerous wildlife made their existence difficult, but not for Hoodwink, who learned to easily evade the dangers. Here are some voice lines elaborating on her situation.
Yeah, I guess sometimes people think they can push me around, but it's easy enough to educate them, like the Thornridge gang. Thought they could bully me into being some sort of gopher. The first two came to find me, I let go minus a few pints and pieces. The next four? Well, only one of them crawled away at all. And I kept more than my fair share. Of course, you'd have to be an idiot to keep coming at me after a thing like that. So the next six I treated real special. Enough to make a demon cry. After that, I'd be the idiot if I just left things on course. So I crossed out the whole lot of them. The locals who found the bodies decided the place is cursed. So it makes a choice hideout if you're ever in need. Every now and then some city stinking crew will venture out into the brush trying to find whatever dumb thing's the latest fancy. Even without my help, they'd end up dead one way or another. Sure as. No greenhorns last long in the deep wood. So I reckon what's the harm in taunting them a bit before they go? There's always the classic Durana bait game, but you can also get creative with the dangerous terrain and other fun features of the forest. Have you ever seen a carnivorous plant could take down a man? Yeah, none of those blokes had either. Paws down. The most dangerous beastie in the deep wood is the Durana. And the danger's not just the tentacles or the teeth or the paralytic secretions neither. It's the temptation. The loss of control. Because Durana pheromones aren't for breeding, they're for feeding. And they affect different folk in different ways. You haven't seen bonkers till you've seen a column of cavalry get swept up in the Durana days. Some going giggly, others going mad. Not a single one looking out for hungry beasties slinking up behind. I don't have to worry though. That stuff only works on bigger prey. So even when one does feel inclined to snatch at me, well, tentacles and teeth only go so far. First thing you need to know about the Durana? They aren't natural. Sure, they breed faster than swamp rabbits, but the first ones were conjured up out of thin air by some wizard. And wizards are morons. So of course the beasties got out of control and ran amok. So now everybody's got to deal with this horrific invasive species that likes to eat grown men for a snack. Though there's some in the pacified lands who think I'm an invasive species. Maybe they're not wrong. When I can figure out how to bait the Durana into Krimwohl anyway, I guess we're gonna find out. Most of my life, I thought my little sis carked it back on the Night of Fire. But a few seasons back, I was tracking along the tree line near the pacified zone, and, well, I'd know that red tail anywhere. She was out with some sort of work crew, farming or some nonsense. Like there weren't a world of food a few leaps away. I couldn't get 2 steps towards her unless I wanted to light the place up. And I didn't even know if she remembered me. She was hardly bigger than a biscuit back when. Not the right move to reintroduce myself with a massacre, probably. I watched for a spot to catch her out, but the overseers kept a bloody harsh eye. Then the whole bunch scampered off, and I burned the crops. I've been back there now lots of times. but she hasn't, far as I can see. I have seen some familiar faces amongst the work crews, and I'm sure I would have known heaps of the others if all our lives hadn't gone up like a keg of powder. I always try not to hurt any of those types when I go in for a bit of fun with the guards, but anyone who tries to fight is fair game. I doubt we would have been that close anyway. The first time I saw one of the work camps, I knew I'd be back. There was so much to muck up. I could keep busy for days. I never really thought about helping anyone escape. I thought they wanted to be there. Even now, I know heaps of them do, but there were some who saw the lure of freedom. Even if the price seemed too steep, life in the dark wood's not easy. But the cunning can set free from the sight of would-be rulers, and for some folk, like me, that's enough. My uncle used to say we'd never had to leave home if that little goblin lady never showed up selling her magic powder. Krimwohl was mostly harmless before they got the black powder, and whether she meant for them to suss out how to make it for themselves or not. Point is, they'd never in a jillion years have done it without getting their mitts on it in the first place. Once they got it though, their appetites grew. All their appetites. And any of us living on the lands they wanted had no choice but to surrender, run, or die to make a stand. So we came to the Wood Tomo'kan, the Dark Wood, where they say bad things await all warm bloods that enter. Wasn't always that way, I guess. But it has been the stretch of my life. Used to just be some normal woods. But then the wizard trials came. Some big old wizard schools set 'em up. Big tests to show off and challenge their rising stars. But nothing's worse in the world than a wizard out to prove something, and they go and gather them all up in one place. Something bad was bound to happen, and it did. So all the normal folk had to leave the Tomo'kan. All you got left living there now's the outlaw type and those who got no other choice. No sane folk would settle in the dark wood now. And of course, while all their little traps and beasties and gym jams are everywhere, there's not a wizard to be found. Who needs them? Till recently, I never had much interest in seeing my old home. Who wants to see pacified lands when the stories of old are better? In the end, it wasn't the idea of the place that took me scouting back, but memories of my kin. I wondered if some might still be out there. Proper citizens of Krimwohl now. It was enough to take me to the tree line anyway. Even if I didn't find anyone worth seeing, I was sure I could scare up a bit of fun.
So that's it for the Australian furry windrunner. At first I was a bit skeptical because none of the things in her lore is connected to anything else, but then it started making sense since no other hero has an Australian accent. Except maybe Bristleback. I'm not sure, I can't tell the difference between Australian and weird British accents. Anyways, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Peace.